First and foremost, we will be talking about the very first version of this magnificent structure we like to call Madison Square Garden. This structure did not get the name of Madison Square Garden until the second version of its construction. In 1874, P.T. Barnum, an entrepreneur in the arts, bought the vacant building of Madison Square Garden for under $100,000. The building was built into a circular/ovular shape, which hosted many events. Barnum then decided to name it the Great Roman Hippodrome. In this open ceiling structure, famous circus acts performed, such as the Sword Eating Act, the Bearded Lady, which would then be one of the most famous attractions that ever was presented, and the Double-Headed Human, which is also one of the most famous acts that was presented, which showcased an odd peculiarity in a human being. Flower shows were also very popular, which in them presented New York's most beautiful flowers. The place was then leased by W.M. Tilson, who created an indoor ice skating rink, which was popular throughout the year, and an indoor tennis court, which a lot of people love to play in. Business in the winter was very low due to the blizzards and freezing cold winter days. However, in the summer, business was very high due to the open ceiling space, which made it a perfect place to cool off. The designer Stanford White, who contributed greatly to the building of this edifice, was killed due to a scandal. Construction continued, and in a few months was opened in 1890. Due to its expansive nature, the amount of people that could occupy the building increased. It was able to host more events such as boxing matches, heavyweight world championships, comedies, which are very, very popular back then, party national conventions, one being the Democratic National Convention, opera performances, which hosted many singers and artists of the time, and circus shows. But now they were able to host more people which meant more revenue. In addition to hosting mass heavy events, the garden established its new statue, which they named Diana, which weighed a whole 1,800 pounds and was created by Augustus St. Gaudens. It was like a big bronze silver statue, which is like awesome. It also was able to hold the first football World Series championship from 1902 to 1903. It also hosted the 6 Days of New York, which is a cycling event that lasts 6 days. Now we are on to the third version of Madison Square Garden. This newer/modernized version of the Madison Square Garden, which made its debut in 1925, was under a $4.75 million construction. The capacity increased, which allowed for more people to attend events. In 1926, the garden became home to one of the world's most famous hockey teams, which is the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers exist today, which is like crazy to think about. Before the opening of the fourth Madison Square Garden in 1968, this MSG became home to one of the most famous basketball teams in the U.S., which are the New York Knicks. More and more events began to be hosted in the garden. For example, boxing matches were very popular back then. There was one boxing match in particular in 1957 where talented Puerto Ricans participated in a riot. Many were injured, and some may have died. The circus acts continued, one being the trapeze act, which is very famous back then. Boycotts also took place here in conventions. One example is the JLC Boycott Nazi Germany meeting. Last but not least, we are now on the fourth version of Madison Square Garden. The building went under construction and opened in 1968. This is another attempt to modernize it. It cost around $1.1 billion to make, which is crazy because that's a lot of money. In this building, many concerts were hosted, which was a result of the increased occupancy of the building. and the more modernized it became. It is still being renovated to this day. Examples would be the band Kiss, which consisted of 4 men with paint on their eyes and stuff. Another one would be Madonna. A lot of people know her. She's most famous for her rebellious nature. Another would be Elton John. And last but not least, Elvis Presley, which is one of the most famous people ever. We all know him. It's just crazy to think about it. Some of these artists were honored with the gold or platinum tickets, depending on the outcome of the show. The golden ticket, you needed 100,000 people to show up, and platinum would be 250,000 plus people to show up. All in all, this building became more modernized. It will continue to live on.